Welcome back to episode 5 of the Colossal color comparison series. In this episode, we're going to carry on looking at yellow ochres. And first, we're going to take a look at gradated washes, where we're going to see a lot of variations in granulations, as well as how well you can make gradated washes. As I always say, I do use a cheaper than normal paper and add a lot more water than I normally would in a gradated wash so that you can see the colors at their worst. Because if a color can behave well under the worst circumstances, it's going to behave really well in normal circumstances. Here are the gradated washes of the 10 colors we're looking at. Now, Daniel Smith is still doing the S thing, but it's a lot more faint and I'm not sure the camera can pick it up. But it's so faint because Daniel Smith's one is very low in tinting strength, and that's not a problem if it matches the rest of your colors on your palette. If you have very soft, low tinting strength palette, then this yellow ochre will fit in amazing in your palette. Whereas if you have very strong, high tinting strength colors in your palette like my one, I think I'm probably going to struggle with this because it's so low tinting strength. It's really going to struggle to match up with all the rest of the colors on my palette. I was actually really impressed with Holbein one. I know I love Holbein, but I tried to stay objective in all the colors, but I was impressed with Holbein one because it suffered the least amount of cauliflowering and created a nice smooth gradated wash. Whereas colors like Sennelier, M. Graham and Jackson's Art and Cassat, they tend to have a very strong mass tone and then it drops down in value very, very quickly. Whereas here with the Holbein one, you can see 4 distinct different levels of color. I have to admit though, I was very impressed with Van Gogh's as well. It gradated nicely, didn't cauliflower. It certainly behaved a lot better than some of the artist quality one. Schmincke and Winsor Newton do gradate nicely as well. However, they do suffer some cauliflowering under the test conditions, whereas all the other brands didn't suffer cauliflowering at all. So if you do suffer from cauliflowering issues and you do struggle to control your water, then maybe avoid Schmincke and Winsor Newton until you get better at the water control, because you're going to get cauliflowering problems. I would also recommend to avoid Sennelier because I don't know what that is. I don't know what happened here at all. And then of course the big elephant in the room is this guy, which is clearly different color to all the other yellow ochres. It's very, very yellow as you water it down, and that's because the yellow ochre pigments have kind of stayed up here and the azo yellow pigment has really started to show itself down here. So as I said in the last episode, if you are looking for these kind of yellow ochres, go for the yellow ochre number 2, not number 1. Now let's look at the salt test. Again, I am so impressed by how varied the reaction to salt really is over the different brands across very similar pigments. The one that reacted the most was Winsor Newton one, followed by, I would say, Holbein Schmincke. Mission Gold's one reacted in an interesting way. It's definitely a very unique texture that I haven't seen before. So if you do like this kind of texture for a particular painting, then I do recommend Mission Gold's Yellow Ochre number 1. Otherwise, I don't recommend this brand at all. Van Gogh's one reacted nicely as well. The colors that didn't react at all are Sennelier, Jackson and Cass Art, as well as M. Graham. And then somewhere in the middle is the Daniel Smith one, where you can see where the salt's being and it's darker, but it doesn't do this whole veining, awesome salt texture that you expect from using salt. I can really see textures like this being useful for like beaches and showing the texture of the sand. I'm starting to wonder whether I'm going to get any color that behaves exactly the same across all the different brands. I kind of hope not, because it's really interesting to see how different brands behave very differently. Now let's look at the color mixing. In this color mixes, we've mixed the yellow ochres with its complement, which for yellow ochre is ultramarine blue, and we mixed with yellow, magenta and cyan. And I will leave lists down below to which exact colors I mixed these colors with. And this is where the tinting strengths of the yellow ochres really come into play. Daniel Smith was the weakest tinting strengths by far, and this was as dark as I could get them. It's incredibly low tinting strength. I actually struggled to mix with them because from my experience with the more traditional yellow ochre, this was so much lower than that. The second lowest tinting strength was the Winsor and Newton one. Not surprising, the two most transparent colors had the lowest tinting strength. All the other colors played reasonably similar except for the Mission Gold again. If you use their yellow ochre number 1, expecting it to act like all the other yellow ochres, you are going to get into so much trouble because of that very unexpected azo yellow in there. And I'm picking on Mission Gold because out of all the traditional, the color that you'd first go for as a yellow ochre, they've done the whole PY50 thing. But as we saw in the previous episodes, other colors do have PY50 in their mix, like the light yellow ochre by Sennelier, the French ochre by Sennelier. So I would actually watch out for these two colors by Sennelier as well. It has the PY150. In fact, I would hazard a guess that this light yellow ochre is going to be pretty similar to the Mission Gold's yellow ochre number 1. So any yellow ochre color that has PY150, you're going to have the same problem. If you are looking for a really high tinting strength, really strong yellow ochre that can stand up to perhaps really bright colors that you want to mix with, then maybe that's an option to go for the ones with PY150. But otherwise, if you want a traditional yellow ochre experience, I wouldn't recommend going with any yellow ochres that have one PY150. It's just going to be a pain, and they're going to behave in a way that you're not expecting a yellow ochre to behave. Now, because of the yellow, all the colors are slightly shifted. The ultramarine blue doesn't neutralize this particular yellow ochre because it's just too yellow for it. Nickel Azo yellow is a very cool yellow, and therefore you're going to need a color that is more like ultraviolet to properly neutralize this color rather than the ultramarine blue. So again, it's really going to confuse you if you try to use this particular color like a traditional yellow ochre. It's not going to do what you want it to do. I would say the most highly tinting strength one was the Casa Arts one, but of course it was also the most opaque one. So with yellow ochre, there's going to be a trade-off. You either go for the transparency, in which case you're going to get weaker tinting strength, or you go for the high tinting strength, in which case the colors are going to be more opaque. So you need to decide whether transparency is important to you or the high tinting strength is more important to you. I think in my case, I would prefer somewhere in the middle, just because although I prefer transparent colors in my palette, this color and this color was so weak, I was having trouble mixing with all my bright colors on my palette. So maybe something like the Holbein or the Schminke, where it's not too opaque, they're semi-transparent, but they do have good tinting strengths that can stand up to all my Quins and Thalos a lot better than the Daniel Smith or the Winsor and Newton ones. And between the Holbein and Schminke, I think I would actually go for the Holbein just because it was so good at creating the gradated washes. So that was yellow ochre. Which color was your favorite? Has it changed from your favorite color before you started watching this episode and the last episode? Do let me know in the comments below. I'd be fascinated to know what you've learned from seeing these swatches and how that helped you decide, no, you like that color that you already have, or no, I'm going to change it to another brand. As always, I want to say a big thank you to my dear patrons who's made this series possible. If you are enjoying this series and if you are able to help out, and that's only if you are able to help out, please do consider supporting this channel over on Patreon, which is patreon.com/Kano, where you can check out high-res scans of all the test sheets I make for all my videos, as well as lots and lots of other rewards. Next week, we are going to move on to a new color, so do check that out next Monday. Thank you so much for watching this video, and I will see you in the next video. Bye!